What have you seen inside someone's home that made you view them differently? Right, I am waiting for your opinion about what surprised you most in someone else's house. Enjoy watching. Story 1. I was dating a guy I met at work during my senior year of high school. He was always very kind to me and everyone he communicated with. He showed no outward signs of being anything but a really sweet, but very alternative guy. We had been dating for a few weeks when I first went to his home. The first thing I saw when I entered his room was a giant swastika and an SS flag on the wall. I told him I had to use the restroom, but I just left as fast as I could. Story 2. I helped a coworker move into their new apartment. They are very outgoing and always have the best appearance, as well as kind, loving, and positive in general to most folks. When we went to their old place to finish packing, after helping them unpack in their new place to make room, the containers were chaos. I was shocked. It smelled awful and was absolutely filthy. Trash abound and tons of extremely dirty underclothes heaped under their makeup vanity that I didn't say anything about, but threw in a bag using a clean garment. Simply let them know I put the dirty clothes in X bag. It was then that I realized they were depressed and were great at hiding it. I still think highly of them, but I felt sad, since they typically make a point to make other folks' day better. It also feels good to know they trust me to see the real them outside of work. At least now I know, and some random comments, behaviors in the past, make absolute sense now. Story 3. During housewarming, they needed some work in the kitchen. Fixer, upper, missing sink. Okay, needs time to find a contractor and save money. Understandable for a starter home. Went over again 2 years later for get-together. Hoarder house. Like, the kitchen that needed work was behind boxes of crap, floor to ceiling, every room. Couldn't walk through the hallways without climbing over boxes because it was filled with crap. A pathway between kit hen table, living room couch, and direct sight to TV was all that there was. Gift for last kid's B-day was still in box under a pile of crap, because it was recent and still visible. Story 4. I lived for a time with a pair of roommates. The wife of the pair was making a huge deal out of not having any room in the kitchen despite having just moved into the new house, so I couldn't store anything I bought in the kitchen. I thought this was really annoying, but I didn't push back. In retrospect, this was a huge red flag, and I should have. At some point, I got fed up and opened up one of the cabinets to find it completely full, top to bottom, with mayonnaise jars. It completely filled the space. There must have been several dozen of them. More than a bit confused at this point, I checked the data on one. It had expired years ago. So was the next one, and the next, and so on and so forth, until the roomie caught me with more than half of the jars out of the cabinet. Every single one I'd checked was expired. She was furious and immediately started shoving them all back into the cabinet because they were just fine, and she was going to use them someday. Nothing I said in objection penetrated. It suddenly clicked. The reason the freezer and fridge were full to bursting, yet she wouldn't eat any of it. The reason every nook and cranny was stuffed full of stuff in the house, yet she didn't use any of it. She was hoarding. And it only occurred to me much later, after I had moved away, that she must have moved all of that expired food into the house with her. Story 5. When I went to my ex's parents' house, the dishes were piled all across the kitchen counters, all dirty. It was like they had used every item, but didn't dare to wash them, didn't know how bad the counters were because they were that speckled 2000s granite. But the trash can is what threw me totally off. It hadn't been cleaned in years. I don't know how or where they threw any new trash. It was so gross. But the house didn't smell. Carpet was relatively clean. I don't know. Super fucking weird. Story 6. OMG, yes. I actually have 2. The first is the worst to me. I met a girl on a dating app. She's some kind of commander at the local Washington Air Force Base. She lived in a foresty area. And after 4 dates, she invited me back to her house to cook and spend the night. I was excited. I met her at the grocery store. We got food, and the first red flag should have been, we need a new pot to boil pasta in a wood spoon. And then I noticed she had a random box in her back seat with paper bowls from work. I was like, weird, but maybe she doesn't want to do dishes. We are okay her porch. And I got my hands full with the pot, food, and spoon. She tells me you step inside when she unlocks the door and close the door while she finds a light. I close the door. It's basically pitch black for 5 seconds, minus the moonlight creeping in the window. The light flips on, and the walls move. Literally thousands of bugs, roaches, flies, ants, and other stuff. I look around. And there's fleas jumping visibly across the linoleum. I dropped the pot and food. In shock, I look down at my nice suit pants and see tiny bugs on them. I looked up to see what she'd do, and she isn't fussed at all. She said, sorry, my roommate didn't do dishes. There was a stack so high you couldn't open cabinets, caked in days-old food, covered in millions of moving things. She opens the fridge and gets a cider and said, "Want one?" I noped the fuck out of there. It was 45-ish outside. I stood at my trunk, took off my clothes and tossed them in Target bags. And by the time I was in my boxers, with clear flea bites on my legs already, she walked out and was all, "WTF? What are you doing?" And I'm all, "I can't. This is hell." She accused me of being prissy and a pansy. This is the country you get bugs. IDC. I ended up keeping my clothes outside when the temp got down to 25. I drove 90 miles home, in my undies, and itching non-stop. I never wanted to see her again. I tell this story to all my friends and new people I meet. It's my cautionary tale of, sometimes people can hide what their lives are like when they want to date You'll share #2 when I'm home. Story 7. I was at my dad's, and there are these dream catchers in the hallway, so I was looking at them, and on one of them was an eagle with the background being the Confederate flag. So I asked him about it, and he looked dead at me and said, "I don't see any problem with it, like what they literally supported slavery of African Americans." And my youngest sister, who's mixed, was in the house. I was mad for a long time. I haven't looked at him the same since. Story 8. My ex said he was embarrassed about his house because his previous exes had made fun of him for not having a great place since he couldn't afford better, so he wouldn't ever let me come over. But eventually, he let up and had me over on the regular to the point where I'd get home before he did, and he even cleared some drawers for me. I opened the bottom set of the drawers to see if that was cleared too. Well, it wasn't. There were used sex toys, mail from 3 different women, planners, bills, and important medical documents. Clearly women who had lived there before me, and while we were dating too, as much of the opened mail was dated as sent while we had been together. I'd like to think he was opening their mail and shoving it in a cabinet, but it was very shortly after, confirmed through his text messages, that he was actively sleeping with clients at work every day, and kicking me out to have other girls over on the weekends, and that forbidden room in the back of the house, hot pink kitty walls with piles of toys for the daughter he said he never had. So yeah, his entire house changed everything, and since I've explained it this far, I might as well put the cherry on top. When I confronted him about all the lies his little bitch ass got so scared, he tried to stab me with a knife for simply yelling at him after he kicked the shit out of me while I was trying to grab my few things I had there so I could leave and never come back. Story 9. One of my first big jobs was working at a call center. The job sucked, but I met some good friends from there. Cheryl was a girl that was flirty from time to time, but very nice. After knowing her for at least a year, and hanging out with her and her BF a few times, she asked me over IM, probably ICQ. I believe if I could rush over as she heard someone in her yard and I didn't live too far away. Her BF was across town hanging with friends, etc. I rushed over and realized she was trying to be come on to me. First thing was the mess all over the place. Not into that. Also, not into cheating. The mess wasn't hoarding bad, blood enough bad that it threw me off. Story 10. Met a German couple who lived on a hill in a wooden house. They used to bury bottles of sauerkraut in the front yard and had cheesecloth-covered yogurt or cheese balls hanging all over on the veranda. He had a rifle and used to shoot the rats as they ran around inside the house along the walls and floor. I used to think the house had an invisible tear along the dotted line mark on the bottom and would blow away in some storm, but it never did. Story 11. I was doing a contractor walkthrough of a home. The dining room area was blocked off by black curtains. Whatever. I just need to do my job. We looked at most of what I needed to see, and then I asked about the thermostat. The homeowner looked at me with eyes that were both extremely worried, apologetic, and weirdly trusting. Then the homeowner said, "It is in the dining room. I can take you in there. Please don't touch anything." "Of course not," was my instant reply. Because why would I touch someone else's stuff? The dining room was painted all black. Furniture, walls, everything. The artwork was macabre, to say the least. The central display in the room was a coffin that stood up against the wall. It had a clear plexiglass. I don't know, I didn't touch it because above cover. There was a full-on mummified human in the coffin. Not ancient Egypt Brendan Fraser mummified. It was a desiccated corpse. An alleged desiccated corpse. I have no proof that it was what was so very obvious. But Mr. _Silverfield, what made you think it was authentic? Mostly that bits don't dry and fall off of a prop and rest at the bottom of a viewable coffin. That, and the shrine beside it that held pictures of a person who didn't look unlike the resident of the coffin, albeit much more lively looking. I stand by the belief that my job is to make a person's home more comfortable, and I don't care how you live. That dining room, though. Story 12. I was doing a flooring remodel for my friend's relatives, and one day I was doing their daughter's room. I moved her furniture around so I could lay the vinyls down. When I was moving her light stand next to her bed, the drawer came tumbling out, and her two-pronged dildo and butt plug came rolling around. They look a little crusty. She should clean them more often. Anyway, she was happy with her new floor after I was done. Story 13. Old woman whose granddaughter my kid used to do taekwondo with. Really sweet lady. And her granddaughter is just a spectacular friend to my daughter. But we were invited to a birthday party, and this woman has, no joke, a full-blown fertility shrine replete with crystals, boobies, Eastern and Western religious figures, phallic symbols, and various other stuff as the literal centerpiece of her living room. It's not that I think those things are bad or whatever, or even inappropriate in that context, but man, if she didn't look a little crazier to me after seeing that. She's also way into crystals, like MLM levels of into crystals. Story 14. Went to hang out at this one guy's house to watch movies once. He was super cute and super funny, and I really wish his house hadn't been so gross. Everything was covered in a layer of dust, cat hair, and trash. He had two long-haired cats that he never brushed, so their fur was extremely knotted up, and also had a recliner that only the cats sat in, but didn't tell me until I started noticing the clumps of cat hair on my leggings and shirt. I have a long-haired cat myself, and love cats, but I have never seen that amount of cat hair in a home. He also had a 2F Teaks 2F corner in the living room he threw trash into. No trash can or even a bag. Just a big pile of trash on the floor. Dirty AF kitchen. Broken ceramic cat bowl for the poor cats with food just spilling out onto the floor. At 30+ years old, are those habits just pretty much set in stone? Story 15. So I went to my friend's house for a sleepover, and he said, "Want to see my creature in the basement?" Now me and him joked about weird, creepy shit, so I thought this was him just saying something. So in response, I said, "Sure, whatever you say." So we walk into the basement, and the second I was about to say something, I heard a screech in the darkened area. I asked, "What the hell was that noise?" And his response is Kyle. Now this wouldn't be so bad if I wasn't 11 years old, but then I heard another screech. To this day, I still don't know what it was. And he yells, "Shut up, Kyle. I have more femurs to feed you later." I just walked out after that. It didn't necessarily change anything, but the experience was unsettling. Story 16. Hospice nurse. Met this lovely couple and immediately fell in love with them. Husband is terminal. Wife and I were sitting at the kitchen table reviewing everything. I am required to ask if there are any weapons in the home. The sweet little wife reaches over and grabs a pistol off the top of her china cabinet. It was on top of one of those Trump Bibles, which was in front of an 8x10 of Trump. She said, "We have this thing. It's our Obama gun." I said, "I'm sorry?" She said, "Oh, in case Obama ever comes around." Story 17. I'm a CSI. I went to a residential burglary when I used to work at an agency in North Carolina. The homeowners were in their 70s. Their house was your typical grandparents' place with lace doilies everywhere, flowers and photos all over the walls of the entire extended family. A table near his chair with hunting and fishing magazines. A table near her chair with knitting needles and yarn. The whole 9 yards you'd expect to see at Grandma and Grandpa's house. As the lady was showing me around with the officer to tell me what was stolen or moved, I came to a slightly ajar door next to the master bedroom suite. I asked her if anything had been moved in there. She said she wasn't sure since she had called the police the moment they had gotten home from church and realized their house had been broken into. I elbowed open the door. Full-on sex dungeon room. We're talking sex swing, hooks on the ceilings with ropes, restraints on boards nailed to the wall, cuffs, paddles, floggers, strap and harnesses on hooks, ball gags of various sizes, video camera on a tripod, you name it. She looked around, put her hand on her chest, and with what seemed a sigh of relief said, "No, thank you, Lord. It looks like nothing was touched in here. I will never look at an old woman in a Peter Pan collar and flower-patterned dress the same now." Story 18. Friend is very accomplished in their field, multiple degrees and certifications for their medical field, works with patients and is loved by her staff, patients everyone at in her clinics. She's very organized with work and personal life, travels often for work and leisure. When she does, we watch over her pets. The amount of dirty dishes and grim that don't change for sometimes weeks is astounding. Same dirty bowls half full of food in the same spot it was 3 weeks ago, only now there's 20 more. House is dirty, like not messy, which it also is, but dirty. Story 19. Met this cutie on a dating app. Went on a handful of dates. After either the 4th or 5th, we went back to her apartment. She told me before in conversation that she liked giraffes. At the time, I was like, cool. Yeah, not the most common animal to say you like, but cool. Giraffes are dope. I walked into her place, and it was much more than just liking giraffes. There were fake vines draped all over the walls, a lot of green and orange furniture. It was overwhelming. We ended up hooking up for a bit, and while she was freshening up, I counted all of the giraffes in her studio I could see from the bed. 82 fucking giraffes in paintings, smaller pictures frames, drawings of her own, giraffes on the wall, stuffed animals all various sizes. It was nuts. We didn't keep seeing each other, but she was still super cute. I'll never forget it, haha. Story 20. Staying at friends' home to watch their dogs. The home they're raising their 2-year-old child in. The place is super dirty, but I try to give them the benefit of the doubt as relatively new homeowners' parents. Even cleaned up a bit for them. Then I discovered the dogs freely urinate in the house. When I started to look closer, there were pee stains everywhere. I had a hard time staying on top of it while I was actively watching them. There's no way the owners are finding and properly cleaning every puddle at the end of their workday and all evening. It soaked into the hardwood and dark carpet so quickly, it was hard to notice if you weren't looking for it. The harder I looked, the worse it got. The couches all had pee stains along the bases of them. There was dried piss on all of the food on the bottom shelves of the pantry, from the male dog lifting his leg on the door, etc. What got me was the baby's toys and play area and stuff are all over the floor, and many of them had pee on them. I was peeling coloring pages off the floor with dried pee all over them. Story 21. One of my best friends invited my wife, GF at the time, to stay at his place when we were visiting in town. Awesome guy, and we were pretty close from high school on, and he let us use his bedroom while he crashed on the couch. Before we came to his place, we went to a movie, but he seemed off. Hadn't seen him in a few years since he moved. Couldn't put my finger on it, but his arm kept shaking, and he smiled, but seemed off somehow. We got to his place. He told us if we need anything, go ahead, because once he takes his meds, he will be out for the night. Didn't know what he meant by that until I saw the pill bottles in his room. Not just 1 or 2, but many empty pill bottles, and they were oxys. I didn't know much about them at the time since it was 15 plus years ago, but he was addicted to them. Story 22. There was a girl that I knew in high school. She wasn't part of our group, but she would occasionally party with us. She and I had hooked up a couple times. One day I was at her house, and while she was in the shower, saw what looked like a photo album or scrapbook poking out from underneath the bed. I pulled it out and could not believe what it was. Every time she had sex with a guy, she kept the condom and put it in her scrapbook. They had not been cleaned in any way. The scrapbook literally stank. I contemplated ripping out the pages where my used condoms were, but decided to pretend like I had never seen it. After that, when we hooked up, I always made sure to flush the condom down the toilet myself. Story 23. So here's my story, very long read. We had a family back home that was always kind of off. Very socially awkward, quiet, removed. They had a son, who was around 12 at the time of this story, who was always out alone in public. Like all the time. It was kind of like he wanted to be anywhere but home. The townsfolk would find him in parks, movie theaters, restaurants, etc., really late at night by himself at that age. The parents themselves were great people, just kind of weird as fuck in a really unnerving sort of way. They also had various groups of people coming and going at late hours, especially on the weekends. Of course, people talked, ghosts and ghouls and blah blah blah. One day in high school, 2 of my friends and I went to their house to pick up an old car. My buddy was buying it in exchange for labor he'd been doing on the house for 6 months while in high school. The parents weren't home and left the door unlocked so he could get the keys. So, fucking of course, he says, "You guys want to see some crazy shit?" Obviously, young as we were, we did. We went up to the 2nd floor that he did the construction on. He basically turned the 2 bedrooms at the end of the hall into one big room for them. He only saw the interior once, on accident, and it was always locked. Oddly enough, the key ring they left him had the bedroom and garage keys on it. So we go into the room, and holy Jesus fuck, it's a swinger's sex chamber. Literally every form of sex-related object you could think of, sans the unicorn from The Witcher, was in this room. 50 kinds of dildos, sex swings, gimp costumes, BDSM stuff. Those tables with the hand and feet straps, furry suits, perfectly placed mirrors, the whole entire latex-filled lot. It was immaculately clean and very well furnished. The lighting was impeccable and reminded me of a 70s disco nightclub. God only knows what went on in there. We were stunned and honestly kind of impressed, seeing as we'd never seen anything like it before except for movies. That's my story. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.